Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another New Jersey Constitutional Republican Virtual Conversation. Great pleasure, always a great pleasure to have my friend Chuck Swanson, Pastor Chuck Swanson, Executive Director of Options for Women in New Jersey. Chuck, welcome.
Thanks. Greetings to you, JR. How are you?
Great. It's great to have you, Chuck. And of course, we have much to discuss. We talked last, I believe it was on July the 12th.
Yep.
And of course, a lot has precipitated since that time. And it's important for people to remember the right to life of those awaiting their birth, those conceived at conception. And
Yes.
With the pandemic and everything that's gone on with people taking care of themselves and their families, it's been a strenuous year, but yet we cannot forget our responsibility in defending the defenseless. So tell
Agreed.
us about what's going on. You've got some big news and give us an update on what's happening with you and your important organization.
Well, just quickly, I'm the head of Options for Women. We have an operation in Cherry Hill. We are a pro-life pregnancy resource center. That means we provide for the needs for anyone who is pregnant and without the resources that they might need to carry through on the pregnancy. Our goal is to take away any things that get in the way of a woman deciding to choose life for their baby. And so we provide pregnancy verification and counseling and referrals, ultrasounds so that they can see the baby, in its infancy, in as young as 6 or 7 weeks old. We provide maternity clothing and baby supplies, and of course we can help them with referrals for clothing, housing, food, and so on. So we want to take care of the whole woman and family and make sure that they see how God sees them as one of His creatures made in the image of God, and worthy of care and respect and dignity. So we have an office in Cherry Hill where we've been for many, many years. We're now in our 36th year of work there. We're opening a center in Trenton. We know that there is a real underserved population there of folks who struggle with financial resources, and they might be undocumented or just poor, and they have the need of services. So we're going to jump in. We have an office that we've taken over right in Trenton, right near Trenton West High School. It's at Parkside and State Street. So we'll have a big presence in the city, and we're working with some organizations in the city already that have said that it's really needed. They can't wait for us to open our doors, and we're just really excited about being there.
That's great news. And what better city in New Jersey to have an Options for Women facility, Chuck? Now, will you have medical facilities there as well? You do in Cherry Hill, right?
Yes. So we do ultrasound, and we do STD testing and treatment as well. Those are overseen by a medical advisor who is a physician, a board certified physician who lives and works nearby. And our STD treatments are the same way, headed by a woman who is a physician, board certified physician. She actually heads up the prison at the Joint Base, the prison hospital, I'm sorry, at the Joint Base. Is highly qualified, and both of these doctors are in a regular way helping us to run the ministry that we have. And we have nurses on staff as well who take care of the patients on a daily basis.
Right, and it's important to note, Chuck, that you receive no governmental subsidies whatsoever, correct?
We do not. Everything that we do is given to our clients at no charge. In 35 plus years of ministry, we've never asked for a penny from our clients. And we receive backing of churches and individuals and other organizations that see the value in what we're doing. And that value, I think, is growing as we expand the ministry. Another thing that's happening this year, JR, is that we've gotten a grant for a mobile medical unit. This is a brand new 25-foot van. I'm sure you've seen the different kinds of vans around that'll have an ultrasound machine, it'll have an exam room, it'll have a bathroom. And we can literally take that mobile unit anywhere our services are needed. So Trenton will be right at the top of our list, but we're looking at the Jersey Shore. We're looking at, the southern counties where there's a real high concentration of folks that are in need. So we're looking forward to getting that in May or June.
All great news. And of course, Chuck, this is why it's so important for people to be generous, Republicans who believe in defending the right of life, people who believe in the inviolability of the life of the child from conception, people who believe these things need to be helping you and helping to support your important organization in comforting these young ladies and talking to them about the truth and the sacrosanctness of life and how important it is for them to love their child and to come to full term with the pregnancy. And also the men who are involved.
Yep.
And it's important for men to step up and to fulfill the duties and responsibilities God has given us as leaders and strong, moral men, being a good example, taking care and cherishing our wives and those who we have relationships with, and strengthening them and giving them comfort and giving them assurance that they'll be able to have their child and provide all that is needed. And of course, you know very well that many of society's problems start with the fact that mothers and fathers aren't together, and they believe that in a choice, that they have a choice that they can make on whether or not to have a child. They're not responsible, engaging in sexual relations, and how important it is that the sexual relations occur within the environment of marriage. Which
Amen.
has been God's law from the very beginning. So
Yeah.
it's very important for us and for our listeners and people to support your organization, Chuck, and they can look up you have a website too, correct?
We do, optionsnj.org, and you can go there to find out more about what we do. And if God leads you to it, then there's a place for you to donate online as well. And
Great.
we
And
appreciate that.
Well, it's important that you get the support from those who believe in the sanctity of life and who want to help, but yet they're not always able. We either through our dollars or through our time, whatever it is that we can do through our advocacy. It's important that we all work together. I sensed this happening. I was pleased to speak with Maria Tazy earlier in the week, and she's going to be joining me for a NJCR Virtual Conversation either
Great.
next week or the beginning of the year. So we want to work with the New Jersey Right to Life. We're working with your organization. We need other organizations to be working and supporting one another in helping mothers who are pregnant, in defending the right to life, in electing representatives that will defend the right to life. And this is why it's so important. And we believe, and we talked about, it would be a good idea if I would love to come to the facility in Trenton once it opens up, Chuck, and I'd invite any of our listeners and our audience out there to join me. We'll give you a date and a time, Chuck, where we can, we'll meet with Chuck up there and get a great look at the facility and do our part in supporting this very, very important work. It's, as I say, it's so important that we all work together in this endeavor.
Oh yeah. It certainly is key. And as you were talking about all the things that are happening in our country, so many of our values are under attack. So I think the timeliness of us being able to open there is really key. I think we're taking the fight right to the city where so many of these decisions are made. And we want to make a statement about that. And we know God is with us. We have a great church from Chesterfield that's supporting us and providing seed money for our work. It's Fellowship Crosspoint, wonderful church led by a terrific pastor, Brendan Coughlin, and we're just very excited. But there are a lot of things that are taking place in our country that are just very negative. There are lots of ways that life is being attacked, and if for some reason we see a Biden administration, I think it's going to be even worse.
No question.
Yeah.
And of course, you're aware of our series, the Abortion versus Natural Rights series that we've been
Yep.
putting out. It's gotten thousands and thousands of views, thankfully. We
Yep.
also have a couple of more episodes that we're going to be adding at the first of the year. But
Great.
essentially, what we do, Chuck, in the series, and I would like people to know that we start with the very beginning of the abortion problem, and essentially, Chuck, it starts with the heart of mankind. It
It
starts
does.
with the fact that the heart is desperately wicked. Who can know it or even begin to
Amen.
understand, as we read in Jeremiah 17:9. And
Yep.
we know that infanticide has occurred right from the very beginning with people murdering children and sacrificing children to pagan deities. Of
Yeah.
course, King Herod killing 2,000 babies in Judea after hearing of the birth of Christ. So
Yeah.
this is not something new, but what we do in the series is to show that as the United States became a nation, primarily under English law protected the child right from conception within the mother's womb. The great William Blackstone, the great English legalist, said that we treat the child in the womb as if the child is already born. And that's the way the law was recognized.
Yeah.
And the states, of course, created, Chuck, laws that protected the unborn up until the most disastrous decision in Supreme Court history, 1971 or 1973, rather, Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Now, what's interesting, Chuck, and you can speak to this, is the fact that the science has come so far since that time. And even to the point where, the Democrats talk about the science of the CCP virus and the pandemic and the science of global warming and the science of science this, science that. They revere science, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're providing the ultrasound that clearly shows the beginning of life for the child, right from the beginning. 18 days after conception, a heartbeat.
Yep.
A child is being given. So the science proves the inviolability of the life of the child. And that's what we believe the Constitution needs to protect. We need the Supreme Court to rule on the inviolability of life.
Yeah.
Now that's what we're working towards, and that's what we believe.
Agreed. A child is a child from the moment of conception. And, the other side says it's just the product of conception, or it's tissue, or it's a clump of cells. I'll tell you what, come into my office any day we're doing ultrasounds, and we'll show you what that looks like. That's a baby. There's no doubt in anyone's mind. And the scientists, the top scientists, agree that life begins at conception, and it's a baby, no matter how old it is, a few days or, 40 weeks, it's a baby. And nothing changes when it's born. It's been a baby all along, and it's a baby when it's born.
And every single one of us watching this program, watching this virtual conversation, we were in the same vulnerable state at one time. Every single one of us. We were all conceived. And I remember Ronald Reagan talking about those who believe in abortion. They're already born.
Already born. I was just going to bring that up.
They're depriving the right of the child to be born, awaiting birth, being formed within the mother's womb. Now, what is the ugly part of this, Chuck, is the fact that, progressivism essentially was a derivative of the Confederacy. And there was a movement called the Positive Good Movement within the Confederacy prior to the Civil War that said it was a good thing for blacks to be slaves. It was good for them. And also, it denied their humanity. It denied the fact that they were human beings themselves. Charles Darwin made reference to the biological inferiority of blacks. A little longer going into the 20th century, we read of and we hear and we know of Nazi propaganda denying the humanity of the Jewish people, saying that they're not human beings. And this is the same progressive argument, Chuck, that exists today, with progressives denying the inviolability of the life of the human child within the womb. It is truly incomprehensible.
Yeah, agree. I was just watching someone named Seth Gruber. He works for the Life Training Institute, Scott Klusendorf's organization. And he said that this whole thing is all about how our bodies, to progressives, are just there for self-gratification and
Yes.
nothing else. And abortion is essentially a sacrament to that need to just have the body be there for the self-gratification of the individual. And that's absolutely wrong. We know from God's word how important each individual is, and it's about a lot more than just sexual gratification. So, it is just a horror what's going on in America. You mentioned what happens with with men who are involved. Think of this: there have been 63 to 65 million abortions in America since Roe. Let's say some of those women have had 2 abortions. So we have 40 million women who have had an abortion, and post-abortion syndrome is real.
Yes.
Think about the depression and anxiety and hardship that's created in 40 million individuals in our country because of the choice that they've made not to preserve a life. It's huge, huge. And the state of New Jersey wants to do even more to allow for abortion here in this state. It's just devastating to see how things are progressing. Progressing. Not exactly.
No pun intended. Well,
Pun intended.
we've talked about the fact that progressivism really is regressivism.
Yeah.
The other day we put up a post of Calvin Coolidge, who I deem as the last real constitutional Republican president. And he said that when the Declaration of Independence says that all men are created equal, that is final. That doesn't change. All men are given God-given unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That doesn't change. No. The government is made up of the consent of the governed. That doesn't change. And he said progressivism comes along and disputes those ideas and says, well, they can change. And really what essentially labels itself as progressive is actually regressivism, because those principles cannot be changed. And the constitutional Republican movement believes that, as Calvin Coolidge, that when all men are said to be created equal, that does not change, or that people are given God-given unalienable rights, that does not change.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that, they use that word progressive, which is really a play on words, but it's just the opposite. The other thing too, Chuck, that I think is amazing is, well, not really amazing, but I would say diabolical in nature, is the fact that the progressives will say, well, it's the woman's body, it's her choice, completely denying the creation of an independent, separate body of the child within the womb, without any recognition. And that's what the Roe v. Wade judges did as well. They gave no recognition to the inviolability of the life of the child in the womb.
No. And, here again, science is proving that, viability is becoming more and more of an issue. At the time of Roe versus Wade, if a child was born before about 28 or 30 weeks of gestation, it likely wouldn't have survived. Now we're down in the 22, 21, 20 weeks. I think there's even been a 19-week-old child that was born and has survived and thrived in this world. So, as science continues and as breakthroughs continue, we're going to see that come back farther and farther and farther. And the arguments, by necessity, will just have to go away. They should be gone now, because we can see that it's a baby. I mean, it's a child. But there's this, what do they call it? Cognitive dissonance that they just can't get past.
Exactly.
Their mind says, their heart says one thing and their mind says another. It's tragic, and it's hurting people. It's hurting women and families in terrific ways. For the Democratic Party in particular, that is so set on helping women. 30 million of those babies that have been aborted were female. I mean, how does that help women? And how does abortion help a woman when it's going to bring on, we know, depression and anxiety, and there are even close ties to breast cancer for those that have had multiple abortions. So, the arguments are just not there for the other side, and it's a shame that they can't, come to grips with that.
No question, Chuck. And we like to talk about the Declaration of Independence quite a bit, and bringing the Republican Party back to the principles of the Declaration. And the first principle that's mentioned are the laws of nature and nature's God.
Yeah.
So a woman intuitively knows this is a law of nature. A woman intuitively knows it is wrong to harm her child. It goes
Yep.
against her very nature. And you and the work that you've done, you have seen the actual effects, the negative and drastic and terrible effects that an abortion has on a mother who decides to eliminate her child. Correct?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. My pastor said we are hardwired from birth to know what is sin. I mean, I have a 3-month-old grandson, and he even knows that if he pushes the issue of crying because he's hungry, and he's really tweaking his mom to try and get a little extra food, you can tell in his face at 3 months old that he's aware that this is something that he probably shouldn't be doing. His 2-year-old brother especially so. We can see that even from very early age, children know what is good and what is not good, because we are hardwired by God to know that.
That's right. We read that he's written the law on our hearts in Romans.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's Romans 1 or 2. He's
Yep.
written his very law on our hearts, and we see that evidence with the laws of nature. Nature's God.
Oh yeah.
And another aspect too, Chuck, is the fact that intuitively we know that we should be defending the defenseless. That God creates small puppies and small animals and even small snakes and babies of any type of species. And we always have, there's that law of nature written into us that we need to defend that, or we need to not hurt that. And that's the same thing that we ignore. That law of nature we set aside when we agree to take the life of a child in the womb. So it's very, very dynamic, the laws of nature, nature's God, as it applies to the abortion question. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and you can see the dissonance in some of the laws that have been made around the country. So abortion's okay, but if a pregnant mother is killed by someone in a rage, or because with a gun, or in a car accident or something, and the baby dies, they're charged with 2 homicides.
Yes.
So I just don't understand how we can have
That's
both
right.
kinds of laws in the same set of law books. I just don't
It's
get
a
it.
terrible contradiction. It's a terrible
It is.
contradiction. And the Roe v. Wade judges did not take into consideration the inviolability of the life of the child.
Yeah.
Yet all those laws that you're talking about are all this old state laws that have existed prior to Roe v. Wade protecting the child. And not only were those state laws designed to protect the child, Chuck, but they were to protect the woman from the very dangerous procedure and many times unsanitary procedure of having an abortion.
Yeah.
And that's what those state laws did. They protected the mother as well. But the Roe v. Wade court, the Roe v. Wade, the defendant and or the plaintiff rather, argued that the laws were only there to protect the mother, and that the mother was still susceptible to unsanitary conditions or possible life threat, without any consideration for the viability of the life or the importance of the life of the child in that decision. And it is really an old decision, and it needs to be overturned. And we provided the legal challenge to it. It can be done. There were times when entities like Black Americans, Black slaves, when Native Americans, when women, when child laborers were not constitutionally recognized until certain decisions gave them the strength and the power of the law, equal protection of the law. And I say, and we believe, that now the last entity that needs that protection are those human beings being developed in their mother's womb from conception.
Yeah. It's just tragic what's going on, even today, with what's going on in our neighborhoods. I mean, Who would think
Mhm.
that in Cherry Hill, one of the rather nice towns in our state, there is the busiest abortion center in the Delaware Valley.
Mm.
It's just horrific what the other side is thinking that they can do. You know how many? This is a terrible thing to think about, but
Mhm.
we've counted the number of cars that go into the abortion center that's up the street from our center in Cherry Hill,
Mhm.
and they do about 10,000 abortions a year. 10,000 just in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Who would think? You would think that it would be, hidden somewhere in a more, urban setting. That would be what the stereotypical thing that we would think of. But here it is, right out in the open on a main street in Cherry Hill, and it's just horrific. And things are, I think, only going to get worse with what Governor Murphy is bringing up in the Senate and
Yes.
Assembly, and we're facing some hard times ahead.
No question. And since you brought that up, let's talk a little bit about S3030/A4848, which they are incredibly calling the Reproductive Freedom Act, which is really Reproductive Killing Act, is what it
Yeah,
should be appropriately called. And Maria Tazy gave a great presentation of exactly what this proposed legislation would do. Number one, it adopts and codifies Roe v. Wade's outdated science and provides abortions, Chuck, right up to the day of birth, 9 months full term,
yeah,
late term abortion protection.
yeah, yeah,
That's the first thing.
yeah. They're afraid that with the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, that
Yes.
the provisions of Roe versus Wade are going to be set aside by various things that are coming before the court in the next several years. So they want to code into the DNA of New Jersey the right to an abortion, and whoa, it's just a terrible thing.
Right. And of course, there are constitutional ramifications in that regard due to the supremacy clause that we read about in Article 6. And if the decision was made by the federal court, of course, just like all the states have had to adhere to Roe v. Wade, they would also have to revere and to adhere to the laws given if the court decides to rule for the inviolability of the life of the child from conception.
Yeah,
Number two, Chuck, the law makes it so that you don't even have to be a physician in order to give an abortion. Speak
yeah.
to that.
Well, this is going to allow nurse practitioners and physician assistants to do um, abortions in a physician's office, not even in a hospital, in the local physician's office, up to currently to 25 weeks. Now, with this new bill, it will allow all the way up to 40 weeks. But you know what? There's a reason that we ask doctors to go to 4 years of medical school, do residencies and fellowships, and to train highly in hospitals where there's a great volume of things, where they see all of the things that they're going to have to know. We give them all of those years of training, especially the surgeons, so that they're prepared for everything that they see in their office or in the surgical suite. A
Hmm.
nurse practitioner or PA, as much as I appreciate them, cannot be prepared for all of the eventualities of something going wrong during abortion. And this
Hmm.
is going to hurt women, and
Hmm.
lots of women
No
across the
question.
state. I mean, if you pierce the uterus or do something, where you cause bleeding during the abortion, they are not prepared or trained, and can't be without years and years of experience and high level training to be able to handle that. It's, as much as I appreciate, I know nurse practitioners and PAs. As
Hmm.
much as I appreciate what they do, this is not something that they should be enabled to do. And outside of a
Right.
hospital,
Right. So
outside of
you've
surgical
got
suite.
codifying Roe v. Wade, and then you have non-physicians performing abortions, and then there's what's a conscience clause. Are you
Mm.
aware of that stipulation within the law,
Yes, imagine you're a
proposed
Christian
law?
doctor, and during your residencies, you have to rotate through the obstetrics and gynecology department. You have to learn how to do an abortion.
Mm.
It's mandatory, And then once you're in practice, if you're a hospital employee and the department head says, there's an abortion coming in at 9:30, you'll do it. If your conscience says, I don't want to, I can't, God doesn't want me to do these, you will not be given an exemption from that. You have to do it or you lose your job and even face penalties.
Horrible.
It's just terrible.
Horrible.
Yeah.
So there's three disastrous proposals in this legislation. And then the fourth one would be no prosecution. They'll be protected giving abortions no matter what, correct?
Yes. So not only the healthcare professional will be protected, and they'll make mistakes. You know, we have people
the non-physician.
Yes, we have folks who stand outside of the Cherry Hill Women's Center, which is where they do the abortions locally, and at other centers like Planned Parenthood in Philadelphia, and document how many times ambulances pull up to the front door, and it's often, it's a regular thing that ambulances are pulling up because women are bleeding excessively or they've had a horrific outcome to their abortion. Now they're going to give the healthcare professionals, the exemption from being prosecuted for that. They will also protect a woman who tries to give herself an abortion. That used to be a crime, and now it won't be. So it's on both sides.
And Chuck, we've been very disappointed with the lack of pushback from our Republican representatives throughout the state. We believe that this is the worst legislation that could ever come to the table on the Senate floor. And of course, Steve Sweeney and the Democrats are going to be doing all they can. Loretta Weinberg is a co-signer of the bill. Phil Murphy, of course, and his wife are very, very adamant in getting this through. They're, as you say, they are threatened by the possibility of an overturn in the Supreme Court. However, as Republicans, we must defend the inviolability of the right to life. It's a God-given right. It's the beginning of all rights. We can't have liberty. We can't have we cannot pursue happiness unless we're alive. And this is why Republicans need to stand up. Our Republican representatives throughout the state need to stand up and say no. And all of those who are against this legislation need to be making phone calls, need to be sending emails, need to be going to the rallies that Maria Teasy and the Right to Life in New Jersey are putting on, and other pro-life advocates are putting on, supporting you, Chuck, and what you're doing. And what the service you're doing is so important because you're actually talking to these mothers and giving them hope and giving them the truth, because they are bombarded with the idea, well, it's your body, it's a choice, and it's hard to believe that when it comes to the only difference between a child is aborted and not wanted is whether that child is wanted or not. Yet the wanted child and the unwanted child are still the same. They are human beings, and God has created that child, and he's used the union of reproductive activities in order to do that. But Chuck, Republicans need to stand up and to be held accountable and to stand up and defend the right to life. And I urge all those watching tonight to share this video, to tell your representatives, whether they're Democrat or Republican, to defend the laws of nature and nature's God, and to protect the sanctity of the life of the child from conception.
Yeah. I just today wrote letters to the couple of candidates for governor that are coming out of the Republican Party and said, in your videos where you introduce yourself, you both say that you're pro-life. Show it. Let's put shoes on that and let's make that happen. It doesn't have to be my center because there are about 15 centers around the state of New Jersey. But, here's one that's going to be right down the street from the Capitol building. Let's talk about what it means to be pro-life and to have shoes on that. So I'm hoping that, that will get some attention. The good news from the Republicans is that the congressman for the 4th District of New Jersey, Congressman Chris Smith, is vehemently pro-life.
Yes, he
is. And he shows it every way, shape, or form that he can.
Yes, he does.
Any opportunity, he's sharing the goal of preserving life.
He's to be commended.
He is.
He's
He
to
is.
be
We're really
commended, and
grateful for him.
he's a federal representative
Yeah.
for that congressional district. But we need our state senators, we need our Republican assemblymen, and I can guarantee you, Chuck, that I will be talking to the gubernatorial candidates quite a bit, and they already know the position of the constitutional Republicans, who essentially believe, as the initial Republican Party, Chuck, was created as a result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed the expansion of slavery into the Western territories, which really created all the different coalitions that made up the Republican Party. And we believe today that the Republican Party must take the same and similar moral high ground and defend the right to life. That, to me, is the ultimate issue. And where a person stands on the inviolability of life of the child will let you know everything else you need to know about that person's policy positioning. So it begins with the right to life. And Republicans don't need to be pacifying those who believe in murdering the child. We need to say enough is enough. Plenty of choices, Chuck, exist prior to conception.
Yes.
Once
Yes, they do.
conception, the law must be given. They must be given equal protection of the law and
Agree.
due process.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're just at a place in our country where we really need to begin to stand up and really shout on the street corners what this means, because our rights are going to be taken away in so many different ways. You mentioned, 1854. I got my undergraduate degree in history from Rutgers, and so you and I are on the same page. And it's the Republicans that have stood up for the morality of the American values every step of the way, and it's the Democrats who have stood in the way every single time. Have stood in the way of progress and of human rights in every instance. And they have and you go all the way back to the earliest part of our country. Not quite the founding, but a little bit later. Every decision where human rights were at stake, they voted against them. So we have the moral high ground, and we should take it.
That's right. And we need to do it with renewed vigor and enthusiasm. Well, Chuck, it's been a great conversation again. We're going to get together. We want to get together up in Trenton at the new facility once you open up. And I invite our listeners and the audience to be aware. We'll get the information out. Chuck, you and I will get together and set up a date and time. But we would love to come up to Trenton with this great new facility. Chuck, you're opening up options for women in Trenton, and we want to be there. We want to take some video and some pictures and really promote the importance of everyone getting involved, whether we do it financially or whether we do it with our time or whether we do it with our prayers. We need to be involved actively in this worthy endeavor that you've long ago started in Cherry Hill, and now you're bringing to Trenton. So, Chuck, we will definitely be in touch about that and get the word out so people can participate.
Yeah, great, JR. Thanks a lot. Just one last time. optionsnj.org is where people can go to find out if they want to volunteer, if there are things that they want to donate, and if they can participate financially. So we appreciate that, JR. Thank you so much.
That's right. And what I'll do too, Chuck, is we share this video. I'll put the link, your link to this video. And I encourage the people to get involved. If you believe in the sanctity of life, then we all need to be engaged in defending the defenseless. Well, Chuck, Merry Christmas to you. I hope to talk to you soon. We'll Happy New Year, and you stay safe, and God bless all the important work that you're doing. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for your work too, JR. Appreciate everything you're doing. Thanks so much.
I appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us. Share this video. Be prepared to join us up in Trenton in January. That's going to be a great event. And remember what Abraham Lincoln, our founding father, said, and he included those within the womb, liberty for all. Thank you very much. Take care. Thank you, Chuck.
Hey, JR, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. All right. See you soon.